What's happening, everybody? I am here with Barron Mamiya, and we're here to talk about the Goldie. This is the barrel board that we've been working on together for the last couple years. It's a board that helped them win pipe the last couple years in a row. And so we're just going to talk a bit about how this board came about, what you are looking for in a barrel board in specific, and how we got there and some of the design features of it. So maybe you could kind of tell the story of before the previous pipe comp you won, how we got to this.
Yeah, so when I think I signed with you guys like 6 months before that or something, and I remember our big focus was to really get a good barrel board, and I kind of had some theories that I wanted to try out with you, and one of them was just to have a lot of foam in the middle for paddling, because I usually like to ride a smaller board. At pipe, I would usually ride like a 6.3 or 6.4, which is pretty small for when it's really big. Yeah. So we kind of like worked on the paddling power in the middle, just so I have a lot of foam underneath my chest. Yeah. And then I also like it when it's really, really responsive. I like the feel of the little boards, you know? I like the feel of it when it's on the wave. So we kind of dialed back the rails a little, so it's a little more thinner, and then the middle was really thick. But yeah, that was kind of like the idea of it in the beginning, and then just to have like the foam under my front foot driving over the foam ball and even backside, because I'm so compressed when I take off. Those are just kind of like some things, and then yeah, you kind of took it and turned it into this. So
yeah, that the first one we did was the one that you won pipe on 2 years ago. So 6.3. That was the first one that we made. And I think part of what I was trying to figure out was how to make a board really stable in the barrel, right? Because you're obviously getting barreled so deep and coming through multiple foam ball sections. So for me, being a California shaper, that's always been a sort of a code that I wanted to crack, boards like that in Hawaii and for pipe. So this board, in addition to like the thickness flow that you talked about, having all this volume and area up here, the more refined down rail, which helps engage the rail when you're dropping it on the steep waves. This board has kind of a continuous rocker curve, notice the tail. A lot of our boards for around the world in California are more of a staged rocker. That's like some of the stuff you have in your bag as you're going on tour right now. But with those sort of waves, you want more of a continuous curve throughout the rocker. And then what's particular to this design is we did like a really deep double concave, starting like in the middle of the board and going all the way through the back. And I'm curious as to why that helps it feel so stable on the foam ball, because that's one of the things you're always talking about with this board, is that it's so like steady and stable and goes right over the foam ball. Any idea why it does that? Because I actually have no idea.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think it has something to do with the breaking of the foam. I'm like bad with this.
No, we're figuring it out together.
It just feels like when I'm driving over the foam ball, or like even get touched by it, obviously they're super powerful. Right. And then obviously I have all this right here to help me, but then it feels like there's almost two jets coming through here. Right. Because it breaks the water in the middle. Yeah. And it's not just that one big single concave, you know? And I feel like that is what helps a lot going over foam balls, and the speed wise. Like I feel like in the past, if I had a single concave, when I would get up to super high speeds, I wouldn't be able to like turn, because the board just wouldn't want to go straight. Right. But when you have the big double, it's easier to break the turn. Yeah, right. So
yeah. And I also feel like with how extreme this double concave is, this high stringer running all the way through here, that it's almost like a stabilizing factor when you're in those really turbulent waters, because this actually sits down in the water a bit. It's almost like a little mini fin action. Yeah. It kind of holds to the maybe turbulence of the foam ball.
Yeah, 100%. Because when it's just a big double, you're just having these two kind of sit, and it's like almost an air pocket kind of here, right? In a way. Yeah.
That's what we think anyway about this board, but I've been stoked to see how well you've done on this at Pipe and other places. It's become the go-to sort of barrel board for our team. Everyone wants a Goldie if you're going to get barreled. So this is a board we're releasing for you, kind of a specialty, although we did work on several versions since the first one on getting it to turn a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the first one we made when I won pipe on, obviously it was the first one I ever made, and then the reason it got called the Goldie was because you put the gold logo. It was that.
Yeah, that was just manifesting the win.
Yeah, and then you made it for me. I think it was like a week before pipe, right? And then I rode it once, and I was like, "Okay, this board's really good." And then I won on it on the last day, and it was kind of just like, okay, this is like the blueprint for what we really like. And then we started to refine it a little more, because in the beginning it was a little more, there's a lot of foam in the middle. I remember I still have the first one at my house, but there's a lot of foam in the middle, and it was kind of hard to turn like on like Sunset and stuff. So then we like refined the rails more, and then I think we went a little less on the double. And that really helped. It really was way more responsive. And then this year at pipe, you made me a couple little bigger ones, like a 6.6, a 6.5, 6.4. And those were all insane. There were a lot more refined rails, a little less double, and the boards were insane, because I got that super sensitive feeling, but at the same time I had all that paddling power underneath my chest, so I was super confident going on any wave I wanted, you know? I didn't have that like, oh, this is a little like, I'm like kind of scared at the drop, whatever, you know? I had all that confidence, and then when I got on the wave, my board was so responsive and fast that I wasn't really hindering my ability.
Yeah, I mean, talking about drops and stuff, thinking about that 10 you got this year in that heat against John, that left, what's going through your mind? Because I know what's going through my mind when I see you paddle into a wave like that. Like, I know what I'm thinking about the board, but like, what are your expectations of a step-up barrel board like this when you're dropping into a wave like that?
I mean, yeah, when the wave came, I kind of, I just had a lot of trust in my board, obviously, but when the wave came, I kind of looked at it and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to take off really late, because it was one of those really, really big peaks, you know? It was like a solid 10, 12 footer, and it was a big peak, and I had a crazy double up underneath it. And I was paddling at the wave because it was gonna break, and I was like pretty far inside, and I was paddling at it. And I remember I turned around and I kind of gave a glance back because Joao was here, but he was kind of in a weird spot and he had priority over me, so he did, and then he just kind of like went over it. I don't think where he was from it was makeable, but I was like, okay, I'm going. And honestly, I don't even think I would have went on that wave if John wasn't in my heat. Because like when I was taking off, I was like, okay, this, like, if I fall, like I'm 100% getting hurt. Like there's no way. So, but when I took off, my board kind of disengaged, and I knew like, if it disengages, it's fine, because you're gonna get this weird feeling for a second, but then the second the board stuck the face, like landed, I got this like crazy, like when I got to the bottom, because the wave was so steep, and at the bottom there's this little area right here, and the board fit perfectly, and it created like this like almost G-force at the bottom where I was like, whoa, and then I pulled up super hard, and all that speed off the bottom like gave me this crazy line, but the board just like held the speed and held like the edge of the rail basically when I was taking off, and it didn't slide out, and I had 100% confidence in my board. I think the only way I would have fell if just the wave wasn't really makeable or I was too late. So I wasn't really thinking about the board, because I trust the board with my life, I guess.
Thanks. But, you're more confident than I am. Well, so obviously this is going to go to market. People that are wanting to pack big barrels around the world, not just Pipeline, because not everyone's charging pipe like you, but places like Indo, big throaty beach breaks, a lot of places around the world. This will be a go-to for people for barreling waves. But then the other board that you ride a lot at Pipe and other places is the CI Pro Step Up.
Yes. And
this is one of yours right here. So this year, on the big day, the day before finals, you were on the Goldie, right?
6.5.
And then on 6.5 Goldie, and then on finals day, you switched to a CI Pro Step Up. So what I'm curious about is, what is a determining factor for you when you're on the Goldie as opposed to this, or this as opposed to the Goldie?
So the Goldie, obviously, it was created for barrels, and that's kind of what our whole idea of it was. Okay, we want to have a board that works really good in the barrel. We refined it, and it worked better for turns and stuff too, but the CI Pro Step Up is kind of like, I feel like it was more so created for turns in a way. Like you ride at Haleiwa, Sunset, you know, wherever it is, Big Rockies, anywhere around the world, Bells, wherever. And that's kind of what this board feels like it was made for. But at the same time, obviously, it's a really good barrel board too. Yeah. The day we woke up on finals day this year, I was a lot smaller than the day before, and I thought turns were going to be a big factor. So I kind of just grabbed my 6'1" CI Pro step up, and yeah, I trusted it because I've ridden at Rockies and small backdoor and stuff, so I didn't really, I wasn't worried about it. This board particular, when it's a little smaller or more for turns, it just feels like I'm more confident on it than opposed to this board, obviously. Right. If it's big barrels, I go to the Goldie 100%. If it's barrels and turns, I'll go to the CI step up.
Right, yeah. And I think part of what makes this board sort of more turn-oriented than the Goldie is in part the thickness flow, like we were talking about before. It doesn't have as much volume forward here. So because sometimes when a board has a lot of volume forward, it can feel a little weird in the turns with all that sort of weight and area forward. So this is much more refined forward. It also has a more sort of forgiving rail than the Goldie does. It's got just a bit boxier of a rail. But I think the main component is the rocker on this board. It's got more rocker than the Goldie does. It's got more curve overall, which just allows it to just swing back and forth rail to rail really easily. It's also got just a very slight, almost non-existent double, just a little bit to break up that water flow like you were talking about, but nothing like the Goldie. The other thing that the extreme double does on the Goldie is it sort of straightens the rocker center line a bit, whereas this one continues to curve through the rocker, so that when you're transitioning in a turn and it lays back on the back part of that rocker, there's all this curve, so it just wants to come around. Is the idea there. One of the places that I saw you ride the Goldie this year that was crazy barrels was when you were in Kandui. And you got that, seemed like an epic all-time swell. And you were riding an ECT Goldie. What were the feels on that board there? What was that experience on those waves? It seems like just some of the most nuts barrels ever.
Yeah, when I went to Kandui, I actually got some boards when I was there, but I brought one 6'2" ECT Goldie that you made me for the winter previous, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna throw this in the bag because who knows, maybe it'll get big, So then we went and we showed up, and the first couple days were pretty small, and then towards the end of our trip, that big swell came, and we woke up in the morning, and I just grabbed the Goldie because I knew it was gonna be big. I don't know how big it was to me, and that was my biggest board I kind of had. So I was just like, hey, whatever, we'll figure it out. And we got out there, and it was like 10 foot, like rifling left barrels, and I was like, oh wow, this is crazy. Like, it was absolutely firing. Some of the best waves I've ever seen. But yeah, I rode the ECT Goldie the whole entire day. The wind kind of came weird a little. It was really like bumpy. And if you see in some of the clips, like I'm like trying to stall, but the wind is like so gnarly, and it was like kind of bucking me around. But the board was holding so well in that, like cutting through the water really nicely. And I think it had to do with the double at the bottom of it. I've seen a lot of other people that day. They were kind of like trying to stall, and their boards were like slipping out, sliding all over the place. It was kind of gnarly, but like I was just having so much like speed and drive on my board, and it was a pretty like insane day, honestly. Like I couldn't believe it. Like I looking back, like, or if I just seen footage, I would have been like, oh, I wish I had a bigger board. But my board that I rode was like so perfect and everything, and it was big, like 8-10 feet, but like the waves were so perfect, and the board was going so fast, and you could like make every section you wanted to. You could slow down, and yeah, I mean, I felt like that was a really big test to see like what the board could really do, Right. Because other than that, I just kind of rode it at pipe. I rode it at Chopes one year for the comp, or the last year for the contest, and it worked really good. But those like pipe and Chopes are obviously insane waves, but they're really quick barrels,
right?
And you're basically kind of testing it out on the drop, because once you're in the barrel at a wave like Chopes 2, for example, the barrel's so big and perfect, and like you're not really doing anything. Right. You're just kind of just standing there and just like enjoying the view. The only thing that you're really doing is the drop, and testing that board on a drop was obviously, I did at pipe and stuff, and then but when we went to Kandui, the waves were much longer, and I could kind of drive and like stall and like kind of play with it and see what I liked and what I didn't like.
Right.
And the board went absolutely insane. Like I got one of the best waves of my life, and it was a pretty memorable trip.
Yeah, that's very memorable. Do you think, or do you not think that the ECT played in at all in those sort of conditions?
I do think the ECT played in a big part. I didn't ride a normal like polyester, you know, board that day, but everyone that was, it looked like, so the ECT, what I noticed, especially in Hawaii, and we did a bunch of testing, was that it kind of, the way the flex is and the way the construction works, it kind of absorbs a lot of chops, you know?
Right.
And that was a big thing that I felt when I was there, like more so than I was in Hawaii. Because we tried it that one day at Sunset, and I was like, yeah, I feel this. But when I was in Kandui, we're going so fast on waves, and the bumps were like these huge moguls, basically, coming up at you, and I was just trying to like stall, and like I'm kind of getting bounced around, but my board's still staying, you know, and a lot of other people's boards were like launching.
Wow.
So I think that had to do, like the construction of the ECT really helped.
Yeah.
And then the board being really good on top of that, like the design was perfect for the waves. So I think the combination of both of them just was insane.
Sick. Sounds like if you're going to Indo, you better get a Goldie. As far as sizing the Goldie, if you're thinking about getting one, you're going on a trip, you're going to Hawaii, you're going into whatever you're going to do, even your local beach break that barrels, I think the way you want to think about a Goldie is as a true step up, which is 1 to 2 inches longer than your normal shortboard, sort of minimum. You'll get it the same width, same thickness as your normal shortboard, but once you need more board because of the nature of the waves, how barreling it is, how intense it is, 1 to 2 inches bigger minimum, and then you could go much bigger than that. You know, this year I made Barron a 6'8" for pipe that you rode later on in the season after the comp when it got really big. So it sizes up really well, it scales up, but it's meant to be a true step up. So 1 to 2 inches bigger minimum, and then as big as you want to go. If you've got the guts, get the board.